August 29th, 1997, Judgment Day. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the 35th anniversary of one of the greatest movies of all time, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. So, come with me if you want to live, as this episode of Cine James Movie Talk starts now. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Cine James Movie Talk. I am your host, Mr. Cine James himself, and today we are doing our discussion on the 35th anniversary of unarguably one of the greatest movies ever made, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. But before we get into that, as always, you know what to do. If you like the show and you like the content, you're listening to me on YouTube and Spotify, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Show me some love, and as always, I greatly appreciate all of your support. So actually, on today, July 3rd, 1991, one of the greatest movies ever made was released in theaters. And I'm talking about Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Terminator 2, Judgment Day was released on July 3rd, 1991. This movie had a runtime of 2 hours and 16 minutes, had a budget between $94 to $102 million, which at the time, it was the most expensive film ever made. And this movie had a box office of around $520 million, making it the highest grossing film in 1991. This movie has some historical significance, as this is one of the movies that was the pioneer furthering CGI effects. This movie also is very big in pop culture, gives us some of the most iconic quotes in cinema. We have, of course, "Hasta la vista, baby. Come with me if you want to live. No fate but what we make for ourselves." Terminator 2. So this movie is a very special movie to me. Obviously, this came out in 1991. I did not go and see this in theaters, but as soon as this hit VHS, I probably watched this movie, I don't know how many times, watched it with my mom and dad as well. Again, I want to kind of go back to some nostalgia for me. I had a really awesome childhood growing up in the late 80s and into the 90s. I had really awesome parents that weren't really that strict with me, and I could watch R-rated movies. And I think that's also where, because of how awesome my parents were with letting me watch these movies, that's, I think, where my love for cinema and movies really took shape, because I was able to watch these movies at an early age and be a part of all that during these peak times of pop culture with these movies. I watched this movie so much. I played the video game in arcades, for those that remember, the first-person shooter. Such an awesome and fun game. Of course, I played the video games on Nintendo, on Genesis. And this was actually the first Terminator movie that I had seen. I hadn't seen the original one yet. The original one came out in 84. So I'd seen this one. Okay. And then I went back and watched the original Terminator. And this is one of those movies, and this movie is one of those rare occurrences, in my opinion, where the sequel is better and way ahead of the original. And don't get me wrong, the first Terminator is an absolute awesome movie. Excuse me. It's a very fun and very awesome movie, but you can tell from the first Terminator to this one, they took the dial and they cranked it all the way up to 11. This movie is just, and the thing about this movie too is, this movie's 35 years old, and when you look at it, it still holds up. The effects, the action, the sound. This movie still looks and holds up just as good today. And as a matter of fact, if I may say, this movie actually looks better than a lot of the movies that are shot today. It's just all around. This is a 101 class of how to make a movie, how to make an awesome action movie. Just this movie is one of those rare movies, again, from start to finish, it just goes, and it is a fun ride, and it is awesome. Um, I don't know what more I could say as far as that goes with this movie. Again, very special place in my heart with this movie. And I am very thankful that I was around during that time when this movie came out to really, and again, go back to 1991, 1992. This movie became a pop culture phenomenon when it came out. And to be honest, it set the bar really high for the future of cinema and how action movies were made and all of that good stuff. And so again, this movie for me is in my top 5 of my all-time favorite movies. And again, I'll say this, it is without question one of the all-time greatest movies ever made. So let's kind of run through some of the stuff with this movie. We start off this movie, and it starts us off, and it's crazy to think we're only 3 years away from this. It starts us off in 2029, and we are already seeing the fallout. We're years past from the fallout of Judgment Day. We're in the war with the machines. And again, when you look at this one versus the first movie, you see the difference. And I understand why. It kind of can be unfair a little bit because the first one was made in 1980. The first one came out in 84. This is 91. Obviously, movie technology and stuff has grown since then. But we get a really awesome look of what the future is, the war with the machines. And then, and which, by the way, really quick, I want to say this. Of course, everyone knows this movie was directed by James Cameron, who also directed the first one. And you can see the James Cameron look in this. It, again, just looks absolutely amazing, which for anyone, obviously, that's no stranger to James Cameron. He is really known for a lot of the visuals and the effects in his movies. And which, by the way, the effects in these movies, they were done by Industrial Light and Magic and Stan Winston. So just kind of throw that in there. Kind of created that perfect storm look for this movie. So we start off, we're showing the future war with the machines. And then we get the narration by Linda Hamilton. And we cut to, as she's narrating, we get the glimpse of the older John Connor, who at this time is it has been for some time going up to this, the leader of the resistance. And then this transitions into, and you always hear me talk about this, and we're going to do an episode on this, movie intros, and how a movie intro, and how good a movie intro is can really, for the most part, can really get you going into the movie. And we're going to have an episode coming up where we're going to talk about all-time great movie intros. And this one is one of the most hype and awesome movie intros, because we get the flames, we get the fire, and she's still narrating, and we get the Terminator logo. Of course, we get Arnold Schwarzenegger right up, and we get the Terminator 2 Judgment Day logo with the iconic Brad Fiedel Terminator theme, in which he returns in this one to deliver another amazing score. Another amazing score, as he did in the first Terminator. We then cut to, so this movie, Terminator 2, just to give a little back thing to this, Terminator 2 takes place about 10 to 11 years after the events of the first Terminator. And in this one, basically, 2 Terminators are sent back in time. One to find and kill John Connor, one to find and protect John Connor. And because as we know, going back to the events of the first Terminator, you come to find out that Sarah Connor will have a son named John Connor, who will go on to be the leader of the resistance that in the future war will end up defeating Skynet and end up defeating the machines. So the Terminators, Skynet, they have to send back, in the first movie, they send a Terminator back in time a T-800 model to kill Sarah Connor before she has John Connor. And in the first Terminator, the Resistance sends back a soldier, Kyle Reese, to protect Sarah Connor. And then come to find out that Kyle Reese is the father of John Connor. And then he ends up, spoilers, he ends up dying from battles with the Terminator in the first movie. So now we are 10 years past that, where 2 Terminators have been sent back in time. Again, one to find and destroy John Connor, one to find and protect John Connor. And at this point, Sarah Connor is now in a psychiatric hospital. John Connor has been placed with foster parents, and we are off and running with this movie. So we get this movie this movie starting up after the intro. We get another awesome scene with Arnold as the T-800 appearing as through the time travel thing as he did in the first one. Again, it's such an awesome shot. When he stands up, we're in 1991. We're at peak Arnold Schwarzenegger physically. Just looks absolutely amazing in this. And then we get to where he finds a local biker bar, and as he's walking in, he's completely naked, and he's scanning the room, and he's trying to find someone that matches his size to be able to have their clothes. And it's kind of a funny scene. He gets into a fight at the bar, of course, and then he ends up taking the one guy that was giving him a hard time and takes the cigar and pushes it into his chest. And when he does that, and it doesn't faze Arnold at all, he kind of realizes, we got a problem here. And then he takes that guy's outfit, and as he's walking out, we get the Bad to the Bone song playing as he turns to the bar owner. The bar owner's, telling him, I can't let you leave. He can't let him take the guy's clothes and his motorcycle. And then that's where Arnold reaches to the bar owner, grabs the sunglasses, puts them on. The other thing that this movie does really good is it injects humor in a really good way that it's not really forced. It just kind of flows along with the story. But there is one thing I will say, for as awesome as this movie is, and I don't really know how they would have gone around it, but it might have been really cool to not already establish that Arnold is the good Terminator, and then Robert Patrick Harris's T-1000 is the bad Terminator. It might have been really cool if they could have found a way through the trailers and found a way through things to kind of leave that suspense for us to find out as the movie's going. But we knew that going into this, and just by the way, this time around that Arnold as the T-800 is portraying his character, you can tell that he is the one that is sent to protect John Connor. So then we get Arnold. He's suited up. He gets ready to go. And then we go to Robert Patrick Harris, his intro as the T-1000, entering the same way that the T-800 did. And then we find him taking out an officer, and then he dons the police officer's uniform, and he goes into the squad car, and he is starting to look up John Connor. We then go to the intro of John Connor, played by Edward Furlong. And really quick, I want to go back to something with the T-1000 being played by Robert Patrick Harris. His portrayal of the T-1000 in this is iconic. It is absolutely amazing. He is just the way his face stays stone the whole time. He's very emotionless to when he reacts to things, as obviously as a Terminator, a robot, a cyborg should be. His portrayal in this is just iconic, and it's just legendary. Absolutely love it. So we get introduced to John Connor, played by Edward Furlong, and he's working on his dirt bike with his friend, and he is living with his foster parents. The mom in this, to kind of keep with the James Cameron world, his foster mom in this is played by Jeanette Goldstein. So for those that don't know who she is, she was Private Vasquez in another one of my all-time favorite movies, Aliens. She was the badass Marine Vasquez in Aliens. So kind of connecting with that James Cameron world. And we are going to be doing, because this year also is the 40th anniversary of Aliens, and that's going to be another one that I can't wait to talk about, because Aliens is another one of my all-time favorite action movies, and I think is up there as one of the best action movies ever made. So basically, we get introduced to him, and we can kind of tell that he's a kind of a rebel kid. He's kind of like a little bit of a badass kid, troublemaker, if you will, in this. Doesn't really listen to his foster parents, so she's asking him to go in and clean his room, and he rides off on his dirt bike, and he is listening to, and I like the way they interjected this. Again, this is an early 90s movie, so he's listening to You Could Be Mine by Guns N' Roses, and which, as a matter of fact, we're not going to do an episode on this, but another Terminator movie. So really quick, I want to say this. Terminator 2 for me is the definitive sequel. I have seen the other Terminator movies, Terminator 3, Terminator Genesis, Terminator Dark Fate, Terminator Salvation. For me, this is the definitive sequel to this movie. I've seen the other ones. I don't really, when you ask me about the canon of Terminator, to me, it is right here with Judgment Day. But I do like Terminator Salvation. I thought that was a fun movie. Was it like really, really good by any means? Is it on the level of Terminator 2 or the first Terminator? Absolutely not. But I do like how they had a lot of the connective tissues to the first two Terminators. And the reason why I brought that up is because in that movie as well, they are playing when Christian Bale, who is playing John Connor in that one, when he's going around in some of those scenes, he's listening to the same Guns N' Roses song that he did as a kid in this movie. So I just was throwing that in there really quick. And then we get introduced to Linda Hamilton returning as Sarah Connor, and she is now in a psychiatric hospital. And she is, all the way through this movie, she is a badass in this movie. She did a lot of training to get in physical shape for this movie. Her character in this, and I like what they did. Her character in this, way completely different from the first movie, and rightfully so, right? In the first movie, she's kind of, for the most parts, she's just this innocent young lady who has no idea what's going on, and then by the time we get to this one, she now understands everything, obviously, from the encounter from the first movie. And we find out through a lot of the dialogues and expositions and things that she had worked on getting John Connor ready, getting her son ready for Judgment Day, prepping him and all that stuff. And so it would make sense that by the time we get to this movie, because of what happened to her in the first movie and how she would be after that she would be a badass at this place and time in her life. But because of the events of the first movie and how she has been with things, they have her in a psychiatric hospital, where we are also then introduced to Dr. Silberman, who was the doctor in the first movie, who returns, and it looks like he's her primary physician at this hospital, and where it's kind of a interesting way that they did this with him, because obviously he was there for the first one, so he knows what happened in the first movie, but he's interviewing with her, and he's talking with her, and he's rerunning through the events as if he doesn't know. And he's basically putting in some ways that she is having these delusions, and she runs through everything again, and she runs through, what's about to happen, what's to come in the future, and all that stuff. And she's trying to, and I like their back and forth, because we get to a scene too where, a little bit ahead of this, where she tries to play it off, where she tells him that she doesn't believe any of it anymore. And she's trying to do it so she can get out and see her son. Of course, he's not buying it. So they have a lot of good back and forth with this, but we have him returning from the first movie as well. And then we're introduced to Miles Dyson. He is the director of special projects. He's the director of the special project and the special projects engineer at Cyberdyne Systems. And he was the original inventor. Come to find out, he's the original inventor of the neural net processor, which would lead to the development of Skynet, and then which he is mostly responsible for Judgment Day. And we get introduced to him at Cyberdyne, and he's going into a secured room where we are unveiled with the CPU and the ARM from the Terminator in the first movie. So the one nice thing that this movie does, and why this movie is so awesome, is right out the gate of this movie, within the first part of this movie, we get introduced to all of our main characters, and they do it in a way that keeps this movie going, and that is really awesome. We get in and out with introducing our characters, and we have an understanding, and while we're getting introduced to these characters, we understand who these characters are. And I like that. I like the pacing of this movie, and that is something really good with this, and what makes this movie, I guess, if you want to say a 101 learning class, a master class, if you will, with cinema, is the pacing. From start to finish, this movie moves. And it gets you in and out with explaining things. And it has exposition, and it explains the plot in ways that you can follow this along. You're not confused by this. And they explain it actually in detail. When we get to the scenes where the T-800 is telling Sarah Connor when they break her out of the hospital, and he's explaining to her how Judgment Day is going to happen, and he's explaining all these things, and then he tells her about Miles Dyson and all this stuff. Like, they're doing it as the story's moving along. This doesn't have, like how some of the movies, they'll move, and then they will just come to a crashing halt to try to explain to you why the movie's going where it's going, why the plot's going where it's going, who's who, what's what. And it kind of brings you, you're on this adrenaline run with this movie. And then when some movies do that, they kind of take you from here to here. This movie doesn't do that. This movie stays moving, and it keeps you, even when we have some of those moments where it does slow down a little bit. It doesn't slow down to where it slows you down, if that makes sense. We're keeping this thing going. We're keeping it moving. So we get introduced to our main characters. We see where they're at. We see what's going on. And then we got both Terminators that are looking for Connor. Obviously, the T-1000, he goes to Connor's foster parents' home, and he's asking for a picture of John Connor and all of that stuff, which I kind of thought, for me, I thought that there are some things in this movie that I thought, well, wait a minute, that kind of doesn't make sense. So, for example, when we go back a little bit, when the T-1000 and he gets into the squad car, and he's looking up John Connor's information, and then when he gets to their foster parents' house, he's asking for a picture of John Connor, and I thought that was kind of maybe interesting, but it was kind of a little weird to me that because the T-800 tells Sarah Connor, when they're talking about Judgment Day and they're talking about Miles Dyson and they're talking about all these things, the T-800 says, "I have detailed files on everything." Okay, well, if you have detailed files on everything, wouldn't the T-1000? Why did the T-1000 need to sit in the squad car and get the address and information of John Connor? Why did he need to go to his foster parents to ask for a photo of John Connor? My thought was that this information would already be in there through Skynet. That if the T-800 says, "I have detailed files," and the T-800 is going back in time as well, and he knows who Miles Dyson is, and he knows all these things, it would stand to reason that the T-1000 would know that too. But I'm just nitpicking a little bit. Like, I guess trying to say, like, no movie is 100% perfect, but there were just a couple little things like that I was like, wait a minute, that kind of doesn't make sense. But it's not anything that takes you out of the movie. Again, Robert Patrick Harris's portrayal of the T-1000 in this, and when he's asking those questions and he's doing those interrogations, it's still awesome. It's still fun. It's just a little small nitpick that I had, that I've kind of always had watching this movie. Of course, then we get to the arcade scene, and again, me being a kid in the 90s playing in the arcades, I really like this scene. This hit with me as a kid. He's sitting there playing. He's sitting in the thing playing Afterburner. How many young boys in the 90s we played Afterburner a lot. So I was a big fan of the Afterburner game because, again, me being a big Top Gun fan as a kid, even I enjoyed playing Afterburner. So it was really cool as, again, me as a young kid in the 90s, seeing the arcade scene just really fit into with this movie. And then right here at this arcade scene is when the T-1000 comes in and talks to John Connor's friend. John Connor's friend, he's not no snitch. He doesn't say anything, but he goes to John Connor and tells him, "Hey, there's this cop looking for you." So then this is where our action now starts to pick up. John runs away. He's being pursued by the T-1000. And then as John runs, he turns into the T-800 as the T-800, as Arnold's coming through the door, and we get those slow-mo scenes. And they try to the way that they set this up is, of course, we know, but John doesn't know. He sees the T-800, and he would remember from what his mom told him about the Terminator and everything. He sees him coming through, and he has that pause moment where he's like, "Oh no!" And he doesn't. He thinks that T-800's there to kill him, and then this is where we start to pick up, because then he tells John to get down, and he fires that shotgun. He fires that round right at the T-1000, and we see the cool effects how the T-1000 takes, because it's a liquid metal Terminator, which we're going to talk about throughout this movie with different things. The effects, again, we talked about this at the beginning. The effects in this movie and how awesome they are, and how they still hold up today, and the way that they pulled these effects off. And it's also kind of if you go back to another Jim Cameron movie, The Abyss, that obviously was the alien creature in the abyss, was a blueprint to the T-1000, but it just looks absolutely amazing as he's taking the shotgun rounds. And he is just, this is, again, from this moment right here, the action picks up, and for the most part of this movie, it does not stop. We are on the ride right here, and he is pumping shotgun rounds into him. And this is where they have the T-800 and the T-1000 have their first face-off. And this is something that, as I talk about, where Robert Patrick Harris's portrayal of the T-1000 really is good, because he is much smaller than Arnold. But the way his demeanor, his expressions, his menacing look, he is very intimidating in this movie. And he is just an emotionless, stalking Terminator. He is just a nonstop, relentless killing machine, and in a lot of ways, and it's because of how they have the contrast set up with the characters. He's more intimidating than Arnold in this, and it shows in this scene, because the way he's portraying this T-1000 when they're squaring off and they're throwing each other into the walls, and then he grabs Arnold and throws him through, and then they're in the department store and he throws him right through the glass, like, because of how Robert Patrick Harris is portraying this T-1000, you can believe this. Like, you believe he is, as you find out in this, and as you find out through the exposition, that the T-1000 is stronger. It's a more advanced machine than the T-800. And you can believe that watching the way that Robert Patrick Harris portrays the T-1000. So we also get out to where we have, we're leading into one of the iconic action chase scenes, but we get to see, again, the portrayal of the T-1000 as he is running. And a cool little thing about this, that when they filmed this movie, Robert Patrick Harris trained himself to do the running scenes, because, again, he's a cyborg. He's a Terminator. He trained himself to run without heavy breathing, without showing any signs of breath. Like, if you look at him when he's running, and that's him actually running, and he's got the full police uniform on, and he's got the belt and everything, and there's some weight to that. And he is running, and he is just very emotionless. You don't see him breathing. And when and I'm sure this was all kind of movie magic in some of the cutscenes, but when he stops, like, he's just you don't see any up and down movements. You don't see any of that. Really awesome. Again, what makes this movie, even, like, when you think about how awesome this movie is, just the stuff that went in behind the scenes and how they took to their characters. And you'll hear me say it a lot through this, but just the portrayal that he had as a T-1000, absolutely amazing. So we get the chase scene, where he is in the flat nose, he's in the semi, and we are on, this is an iconic area in Los Angeles. It's Bull Creek in San Fernando Valley. And this is such a cool scene with Arnold has John Connor on the bike, and they're going through, and it just looks so, again, this movie is such a badass movie. We got Arnold, the T-800, and the way he's got that shotgun, and he's swinging it around, reloading it and firing it off. It is just really, it's so badass. It is so awesome. And then so we're moving things along. We're getting some exposition where the T-800 is now telling, John wants him to stop the bike, and they get some exposition on why he's here, what's going on. And right away out of this, just within this first dialogue with them back and forth, we see the chemistry. They had really good chemistry with each other in this. And this is also, again, where I said things are getting explained easily. You can follow along with what Arnold is telling John Connor, with what the T-800 is telling him. You can follow along with this. And then we lead this into the phone call scene where John wants to call his foster parents just to make sure they're okay. And the mom answers and he's talking with her and something just doesn't feel right. And this is where he gives the phone to the T-800, which disguises his voice as John. And he asks John, what's the dog's name? And he makes up the name for the dog. And the mom responds to that name. And then that's when he tells him, your foster parents are dead. And we get that awesome shot where we see that the T-800 has the morphine capability. And he has transformed himself into John's foster mom. And he has his metal blade, which is an iconic look for this T-1000. And that's how he kills his foster dad. And it also stands to believe, too, because he's transformed into the foster mom, that he is also disposed of her as well. And again, the effects, the morphing sequence effects in this, they look so good. Again, this is a movie in 1991, and it's crazy to think that a movie that came out in 1991 has effects that look better than a lot of the movies from today. So we get as I talked about, we have the relationship with John and the T-800 as we're moving along. And it's a very cool, again, we see this relationship even at the early stages of this here. We see some of the humor, some of the dialogue, and you can see a general, like, the thing about this and what makes it really cool is you can see, like, there's a general affection that the T-800 has for John, even though it is a machine and it's sent there to protect him with their dialogues and the way he interacts with John and some of the humor back and forth. Very father-son type relationship. And Arnold's portrayal, I talked a lot about Robert Patrick Harris, but Arnold's portrayal as the Terminator in this one it's so good. It's such an iconic, and to see how he portrayed the Terminator, obviously as the villain in the first movie, to have that contrast and change his tone up in this one, just it's again, iconic portrayal. Really fun to watch Arnold as the T-800 in this one. So then John orders the T-800 because the T-800's main protocol is to protect John, not really do anything else. So as we find out, he's able to give orders to the T-800. It's in his programming to obey John Connor because John Connor tells him he can't kill anyone. He's not to kill anyone. And then he orders him to go with him to get his mom out of the psychiatric hospital. In which the T-800 tells him that would be a bad idea because that is where the T-1000 would anticipate that as well. So this is where we go to the hospital where we get some more awesome effects as the T-1000, he comes like that awesome shot where he's the floor and he comes up as the black and white tiled floor comes up and then morphs into the officer that's at the vending machine getting a coffee, which behind the scenes, if I'm not mistaken, those were twin brothers. That's how they did that. That's how they did that scene with the officer. So T-800 has now infiltrated the hospital, and Sarah is trying to escape. She grabs Dr. Silberman, and she tries to escape with him as a hostage. And then as the T-1000 enters and is wreaking a little havoc, Sarah runs from it, and then we get that slow-mo of her coming around the corner as the T-800 comes through the elevator, and she hits that pause, and she slows down, and she is panicking because, again, she doesn't know. She goes off of her memories. She knows that this is the Terminator that tried to kill her in the first encounter, so she takes off running back the other way. As she's doing that, John comes through the elevator, trying to get his mom to stop. He's yelling at his mom. Terminator goes over because all the hospital workers, they're trying to restrain Sarah. And then this is where Arnold comes up and he's grabbing him. He's throwing him to the walls. And then we get that one shot where the lady officer, she slams right into Arnold's face, and he has that quick turn and the glasses are bent and he looks at her. It's so awesome. And this is where we get another amazing visual. First she's on the ground and he gives that classic line. He looks at her and says, "Come with me if you want to live." And she's just kind of in this state of like, what is going on here? And then the three of them are standing there, and Dr. Silberman is up against the wall, and we see the T-1000 go through the bars. Absolutely awesome. But it is kind of it's a funny thing in how they did this as well, and within the writing of this, that we see the T-1000 morph through the bars, but the 9mm, the gun that he has, can't. And it's kind of this kind of little funny thing when he's got it stuck between the bars and he has to turn his hand. But this is where again the chase is on, and he's chasing them. They have the fight scene through the elevator. They're coming out. They get into the car. They're taking off, and this is again another awesome run scene where you just see him running emotionless. Again, the training that Robert Patrick Harris had to do for this, absolutely fantastic. And then we see the metal arms again as he jumps, tries to attach himself to the car. Arnold tells Sarah to drive. He comes out the side of the car, a couple shotgun blasts, knocks the T-1000 off, and then this is where we get some more exposition. And they find a looks like a little car automotive shop place to go, and because Sarah in the elevator with the T-1000's metal, when he morphed his arms into the blades, he got her on the back shoulder, and then of course the T-800 took heavy rounds, so they find this place where Arnold, the T-800, he does the stitching, does the healing on, he fixes up Sarah Connor's shoulder, and then she in turn takes the bullet rounds out of his skin. And then again, more good exposition. And then we cut to where Sarah and John are laying there in their areas, and then we see the T-800 just standing there looking on. And if I'm not mistaken, because it transitions from day to night, and I could be wrong in this. We'd have to look it up. Someone could tell me if I'm wrong. But when they shot this, that's a real transition. I think that's an actual transition from day to night. I don't think that's an effect transition. I think when they did like Arnold, I don't know how they 100% pulled that off. It's in the making of, I'm sure. And someone could tell me if I'm wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure they did that with him standing there from the transition from day to night. Again, just really awesome. Just an awesome visual. So in their conversation, so now we get them driving. They're continuing down the road, and this is where the T-800 is giving Sarah all the information. She's telling her about Skynet and when Skynet, and Judgment Day and everything that happens. And he tells her about Miles Dyson and how Miles Dyson is primarily basically the one that's responsible for starting Judgment Day. And so they go to, I guess you want to say, a safe place. It's their Uncle Enrique, friend of Sarah Connor's, and so this is where they go to get they get their weapons. They get into their vehicle. They have like come to find out Sarah Connor has a weapons bunker down there, and this scene's actually a nod to kind of a fun jab, if you will, when Arnold, the T-800, when he grabs the minigun. And John Connor tells him that's definitely you, and Arnold's T-800 gives that little smirk. That was actually like a little fun jab to Jesse Ventura from the movie Predator. If you guys remember in the movie Predator, Jesse Ventura's character carried that same gun in the movie, and this was kind of like a little fun nod, a little fun jab to that in Predator. And this is where we also get again. We see the chemistry again between the T-800 and John. And as they're doing the high five, down low, too slow, and you see all that. And then something I didn't touch on earlier, the relationship as well between Sarah Connor and the Terminator. Because obviously, and it's fully understood, that she's very hesitant on this relationship with the Terminator because of what she went through in the first movie. And but as it goes, you see their relationship change. And in this scene where John is doing the high five game with the T-800, she's watching from a distance, and she understands that the T-800's purpose is to protect John at all cost, and that she basically says he's an ideal father figure. He's never gonna get drunk and hit John. He will do everything he can to protect John. And we then get the nightmare sequence that she has, where she is she's coming up on the kids and the parents, like they're playing in the little playground area, and it looks like it's on the outer part of LA. And she's at the fence, and she knows what's about to happen. And so obviously with this, it's looking like this is the August 29th. This is the Judgment Day, and she's knocking the fence, and she's yelling for them to get away. And then we see what looks like Sarah Connor playing, and it's supposed to be Sarah Connor. It's playing with her kid, which in this scene, and that is actually, and again, I could be wrong in this, but that they actually used Linda Hamilton's twin sister for this scene. But then we see the blast from a distance, and then we get the instant, like, everything just gets absorbed and gets destroyed by the blast, and we have that moment where Sarah Connor, like, everyone's all in flames, and then it explodes, and then she wakes up, and then we see the carve. Like, she has the no fate carved on the table, and then this is where she decides, because of the information that the T-800 gave her, she decides which again goes back to my thing. My one nitpick is the T-800 had detailed files, was able to tell her who Miles Dyson was, his address, where he lives. Goes to my point earlier about the T-1000. Why didn't the T-1000 know where John Connor was at? Why did the T-1000 have to go through the squad car to find the address, find the information, all this other stuff? T-800 was able to give that information to Sarah Connor. So again, just a little small nitpick, but something I thought about as I was watching this. So she takes off. She leaves John and the T-800 behind, and she takes off, and they find out, John and the T-800 are finding out because they're by the carving where she put on a thing that says no fate, and then John gives one of the classic lines, no fate, but what we make for ourselves. And he realizes that she's going to kill Miles Dyson. So then we get to where we see a kid playing with an RC car that is Danny, and his mom is telling him it's time for him to go to bed. And then we see Miles Dyson at his computer doing some work, and we see Linda Hamilton. She has arrived, and she is getting ready to sniper Miles as just the timing. Danny's RC car hits Miles in the leg. He drops down, and Sarah Connor just unloads on this house. And again, this scene even, and Linda Hamilton's portrayal of Sarah Connor in this scene's kind of intimidating. She's very menacing and intimidating, almost like a Terminator. She's acting very much like a Terminator in this scene, and how she's stalking Miles Dyson, and then as she gets to him, she does get a shot to his shoulder, and as they get into their living room and he falls down, Danny, his son, crowds over him and is telling Sarah Connor, "Don't hurt my dad, don't hurt my dad." The mom is there crying, just in a hysteria, of course, and then this is where John and the Terminator come in as Sarah she does not end up killing Miles Dyson. She falls back and she starts to have a breakdown. And then we get to that where John takes out his knife and he tells the T-800 to show him. And this is, again, the effects and everything. This really awesome scene. This is where the T-800 takes the knife. He cuts into his forearm to pull the skin back to reveal to Miles Dyson the cybernetic, the robotic arm, which is the same as the arm that Miles has at the Cyberdyne Systems. And so this is where we get to the scene where they are sitting down at the dinner table, and the T-800, again, he is going through and telling Dyson everything that's about to happen, everything that's going to happen, what he will do, and it is determined that we are going to change the future here. He's not going to continue his work, that it all needs to be destroyed. And we go to, we get another awesome action sequence here where we go to the Cyberdyne Systems, and they go in to get the CPU from the first Terminator and the arm and destroy everything, to destroy Cyberdyne. And as this is happening, obviously, because what they did with the security guard is they walked in, the other security guard finds the other one tied up into the bathroom, and so they call the police. And we are now with a bunch of police cars, SWAT, they're all there, and then we have this is where we have the awesome scenes where SWAT comes in, and the teams come in, and they end up shooting up Miles Dyson as he's holding the detonator. So that puts him down, but he's not out yet. And then this is where we get the awesome action sequences with the T-800, and this was really cool, where we see he takes the table and he just kicks it out the glass and he just unloads. But John tells him, don't kill anyone. So he has that, and it shows how human casualties in zero. Really awesome. I mean, just such a badass scene. And then as the SWAT team continues, as they're continuing to enter in, they see Miles Dyson's there, and he's got the detonator, and he dies. And as he dies, he releases the detonator, and it blows up. It blows up the Cyberdyne at the top floors and all that stuff. And then, of course, while within all this too, we get the other awesome thing of the Terminator with the he's got the grenade gun and that awesome sound it's making as he's firing, as he's shooting it off. And then when they get down, they're down to the lower level. I'm out of sequence a little bit with this, but just this whole setup when they get down to the lower level and they release the tear gas, release the gas out, and Arnold's walking through, and he goes to pull the mask off to take him back to Sarah and John, because they have the one that they're changing back and forth. Again, it's just an awesome sequence. And then this is where they get into the armored car, the SWAT vehicle, and they take off. And then as they are doing all that, the T-1000 arrives because he went to the Dyson house earlier and then heard on the radio of the altercation of the situation going on at the Cyberdyne systems. So he gets there, and it's really cool. Again, he's on a motorcycle, and he has the motorcycle, he's going up the stairs. And then when he realizes they're not there, he sees the helicopter coming across, and he takes the motorcycle, flies off, and he lands onto the helicopter as the motorcycle crashes. And then we have that another cool, awesome, he headbutts the glass, and he has the morphing sequence where he goes into and he sits down in the chair. He looks right at the helicopter pilot and tells him to get out. And then he takes off in a helicopter, and we get another, I mean, really awesome chase sequence where the T-1000's in the helicopter pursuing T-800, Sarah, and John in the SWAT vehicle. And actually, again, someone can comment this, but if I'm not mistaken, when they filmed this, the Jim Cameron wanted the helicopter to fly under the interstate. And the pilot, I can't remember what the deal was, but they did not. They're like, no, we're not doing that. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be way off on this, but I thought it was Jim Cameron flew the helicopter himself and he went under. I could be way off on that, but there was something with that sequence. And again, when you think about those things and how they shot this movie, it just adds to how awesome this movie is. So chase sequence ends up with them heading to this. They end up crashing. They end up into the steel mill, where they have another face off. The T-1000 and the T-800 face off again, where the T-1000 destroys. I mean, for the most part, he wins. He defeats the T-800, shuts the T-800 system off, just wrecks shop with him. And then we get he's in pursuit now of Sarah, and he has the thing where he says call to John. He's got the little, like, his finger, and he's doing the metal of the blade into her, and he's like call to John. And then we see then where the T-800 comes back online, and he's got one of his arm, like one of his forearms gone. His face is all, you see a lot of the metal exposed in his chest and his legs. And then he's got one eye. He's got one of the red eyes. I mean, it's just an awesome look, but he has been through it at this point, and his system has been restarted. He's back up and moving. And then we get to where we see John going to Sarah. Come to find out, that's not Sarah. That is the T-1000. And as he is calling for John, and John is going to what he believes is his mom, we get Sarah coming in from the other side, pumping rounds into the T-1000. And this is where we get Arnold coming back, and he fires off into the T-1000, causing the T-1000. This is kind of also I guess you want to say this scene where the T-1000 is like literally split in half, and top of its head and stuff is hanging over, and it's screaming, making those noises. This is almost kind of it's a nod to John Carpenter's The Thing. For those that have seen that cult classic, very similar sequence, but a nod to. And then the T-1000 falls into the liquid, falls into all the liquid metal area right there where it's all hot and the fires. And that ends up causing the demise of the T-1000 because it can't reform in all that heat. And so that leads to the demise of the T-1000. And then we get the really good scene here where John takes the CPU in the arm from the first Terminator, drops it in there as well because that will also melt the metal. And this is where we get where the T-800 says, well, John says, or they say like everything's been destroyed, it's over. And he says, not everything. For this to truly be over, I have to be destroyed as well, but he cannot self-terminate. And I thought that was really neat that they set that up where he cannot self-terminate. So he gives Sarah the buttons to lower the chains down into the area below. And this is where we get another good scene showing the relationship between John and the Terminator, where John's, very emotional and he's ordering him not to go. He doesn't want him to go. And this is where we get the one callback from the scene earlier, where if you go back earlier to beginning here, when they got Sarah Connor out of the hospital, he sees John crying and he asks, he's like, why do you cry? So stuff. And then he gets to the end here where he sees John crying again. And he says, I know now why you cry, but that is something I could never do. And we get that really enduring scene where they hug. And then he gets on the chain and he lowers himself, and Sarah lowers him down. And just as we get that last glimpse of him, he puts his arm out there and he gives the thumbs up. And then that is the end. We see his system shut down. That is the end of the T-800. And then we have a closing monologue with Sarah Connor. And then we get the nice score music coming in, and that is the end of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Again, I'll say this unarguably, one of the greatest movies ever made. It's in my top 5 all-time favorite movies. I never get tired of seeing this movie. It is a joy. It is a fun, awesome ride from start to finish. And it's just one of those movies to me that no matter how many years go by, we could be at the 45th anniversary of this movie, and this movie doesn't seem to age. It still looks just as amazing. And this is also one of those movies, because you know how a lot of older movies get like the Blu-rays, they used to get like Blu-ray 4K remasters, 4K upscales. And this is one of those rare old movies that when it's upscaled to 4K, it looks amazing. So that is going to do it for my discussion on the 35th anniversary of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I want to know what you think about Terminator 2. Do you think it's one of the greatest movies ever made? Leave your comments below. I want to know your thoughts. So that is going to do it for this episode. My next episode is going to be on my 4th of July tradition movies. There's 3 movies that I always watch on the 4th of July. They are my tradition movies, and that is Jaws, Jaws 2, and of course, Independence Day, which Independence Day, by the way, is also celebrating an anniversary. This year is the 30th anniversary of Independence Day. So that's going to be the next episode where we're going to talk about my 4th of July tradition movies. And then after that, we are going to have my spoiler review discussion on the new DCU movie, Supergirl. I'm going to have a couple other episodes coming up. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing after that, but we are getting ready. It is right around the corner. Spider-Man, brand new day. I cannot wait to see that, and I cannot wait to discuss that with everyone. So that is going to do it for this episode. Again, if you like the show, you like the content, listen to me on YouTube and Spotify. Hit that like and subscribe. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at Cine James Movie Talk. Also, check out my other show that I co-host alongside the Big Rob Theory, Super Cinema Brothers. Check that out. You are not going to want to miss those episodes. Again, that is Super Cinema Bros. That is going to do it for this episode. As always, guys, thank you for all the love and support, and I will see you at the box office.